We went up the street. There was a woman standing in the corner.
I'm Officer
And I said, did you see anybody go by you? He says, a big guy came running down the street a little while ago, and he was carrying something. He had stuff wrapped in his hand, bloody stuff. He went up the street of Broadway, and he dumped something in a barrel up there and kept on going.
The storm hit without warning. One moment, a family was asleep inside a canvas tent. The next, rain hammered the earth so violently it sounded like gunfire. Hours later, 2 children would be gone, swept into darkness by a wall of water. And hundreds of miles away, in a city still haunted by a brutal double murder, a psychic would say the same chilling words, "This is not over." November 23rd, 1976. Albany, New York. The day before Thanksgiving, the city was preparing for family dinners and crowded church services.
And they wanted to know who were the recent parolees and what were their MOs. What was the nature of the crimes they committed?
But in a modest religious supply store tucked inside a fading business district, something unspeakable had already happened. When the shop owner entered that morning, he noticed the silence first. No greeting, no movement behind the counter. In the bathroom, he found a body. The man lying on the tile floor had been savagely attacked. His throat cut so deeply it nearly severed his neck. Moments later, another body was discovered in a supply closet. A frail, elderly employee. Multiple stab wounds to the chest. There were no screams reported. No shattered windows. Only blood. And a cash register left partially open, with only a few dollars missing. The attack wasn't sloppy. It was personal. And whoever did it walked away unseen. Witnesses described a tall, powerfully built man fleeing the scene. Bloody cloth wrapped around his hand. Police followed a trail of blood drops that led several blocks away before vanishing near a furniture outlet store. Inside a nearby trash barrel, investigators found blood-soaked fabric and a priest's vestment. The killer had discarded evidence, but not enough. Lab analysis revealed something significant. The blood type left behind at the scene was type O. So was the blood type of a recently paroled violent offender working at that furniture outlet. Lemuel Smith. He had a history, assault, armed robbery, violent tendencies, but when questioned, he was calm, cooperative. He claimed he was at lunch during the murders. His alibi checked out. Officers examined his hands for cuts. Nothing obvious. No arrest was made. And then another body surfaced.
It appeared, based upon the throat slitting, that possibly there could have been a similarity, and the same individual may have perpetrated this crime.
A young woman, throat slashed, less than a mile from the religious store. The city began to whisper the word no one wanted to say out loud. Serial. With pressure mounting and no solid evidence, law enforcement took a controversial step. They contacted a psychic. She agreed to visit the crime scene, but insisted on knowing nothing beforehand. Inside the store, she paused. She described a violent confrontation, a man enraged after being rejected, a struggle near the back.
I feel so sorry.
And I said, well, he's about 40. He's black and about 6 foot.
She said the first victim tried to intervene and paid with his life. She described the killer as black, around 40, tall, powerfully built. Then she added something unsettling. She sensed 2 personalities, a larger presence and a smaller shadow beside him. The officers dismissed the detail at first, but she wasn't finished. She led them outside, walking in a dazed focus toward the exact barrel where the bloody clothing had been recovered.
I walked out of the store in this sort of a semi-trance state, and I just pointed and I turned left.
Then she stopped near the furniture outlet. She said the killer either lived or worked there, and she warned them, he will kill again. 6 months later, another woman was found stabbed to death in a nearby town.
Semi-trance, not a trance. I was able to walk and still talk to them and answer them, but I started to see so much and feel so much.
This time, a witness placed Lemuel Smith near the victim shortly before her death. Still, nothing concrete tied him to the scene. Then, a break came from an entirely different crime.
That catch him. But I feel he's going to kill a woman soon. And don't ever tell anybody I ever worked on this case because I don't want it to be me.
A local legal secretary was reported missing after lunch. Hours later, her car was spotted by a passing motorist. Inside the vehicle, officers found her alive. And beside her, Lemuel Smith. She reported being abducted and assaulted. Smith was finally in custody. When booked, officers noticed something they had missed months earlier: a scar along the side of his hand near the knuckle, the kind of injury consistent with slipping on a knife blade during a stabbing. Investigators reopened the double homicide file. This time, forensic odontologists compared bite marks from one of the later victims to molds of Smith's teeth. It was a match. Confronted with mounting evidence, Smith admitted being present at the religious store.
Subsequent to that, we got molds of Lemuel Smith's teeth.
But blamed the murders on his brother. There was just one problem. His brother had died years earlier. Psychologists later theorized that Smith had created a split identity, a smaller brother personality to carry out violence while preserving his own self-image.
And that he watched, and in some cases he tried to stop the homicides.
I remember John's rage, his anger.
But he watched from afar while his younger brother, the little brother, killed.
The psychic's earlier vision of dual presences suddenly felt less abstract. Smith was sentenced to multiple life terms. The killings stopped. But in another state, tragedy was unfolding of a different kind. July 8, 1994, Davis, Oklahoma. The Sadler family had never gone camping before. Turner Falls Park seemed like the perfect place to start. Cool water, green hills, a quiet creek nearby. By midnight, they were asleep inside their tent. At 1 a.m., a violent thunderstorm rolled in. By 3 a.m., floodwaters seeped through the campsite. The parents decided to leave. They packed their two children, Nathan and Wendy, into the car and drove toward town. They approached a low-water crossing over Honey Creek, usually shallow. That night, it was a torrent. They edged forward carefully. The current lifted the vehicle, then shoved it sideways. The car was swept off the road and into the raging water below. Rescue crews arrived quickly, but the current was relentless. The father managed to escape. The mother was pulled to shore downstream, but the children were gone. Hundreds of volunteers joined the search. Police, firefighters, National Guard units, divers. On the third day, Nathan's body was found 2 miles downstream. His sister Wendy was still missing. Days passed. Hope faded. In desperation, the family contacted a psychic in California. She agreed to help but requested no details. She described the terrain accurately, the creek, the debris, the flood damage. Then she said something devastating. Wendy was no longer alive, but she could not yet see where the body was. She described a blue wooden boat lodged near the riverbank. 50 yards beyond it, a concrete culvert. Between those two landmarks, she said, Wendy would be found. Officers were skeptical, but they had exhausted every lead.
The family was wild with anxiety. And so I believe this is one of the reasons that they did call me in, and it's just any last-ditch effort.
They followed the psychic's instructions. 8 miles downstream, in the next county, they saw it. A blue boat, culvert. Search teams moved in. Wendy's body was located precisely where described, partially covered in debris, lying on her back. Even seasoned responders struggled to process what they were witnessing. The psychic had never been to Oklahoma. She had never seen Honey Creek. Yet the landmarks were exact. In Albany, a killer was stopped before he could strike again. In Oklahoma, a family was given the painful gift of closure. In both cases, investigators turned to something beyond conventional methods when the trail went cold. Skeptics remain. They always will. But for the families left behind, answers mattered more than explanations. A thunderstorm stole 2 children. A blade ended innocent lives. And in the shadows of both tragedies, unseen forces, whether psychological or something more, played their part. Some mysteries are solved in courtrooms. Others are solved beside riverbanks. And sometimes, When logic fails, people reach into the darkness, hoping someone somewhere can still see.